One. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fusion Underground. I'm your host, Manuel Ramirez, and here at the Fusion Underground, what we try to do is we try to make sense of the world by having principled discussions about such topics as entertainment, current events, politics, and culture. And our mission is really a simple one. Our mission is to try to educate people to become critical thinkers so they can live more empowered and happier lives. And I'm joined tonight by my co-host, my favorite, beauty and glory, Jason Moret. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm great, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well.
I love that you put out there what our purpose is. That's your purpose. My purpose here is to have fun and poke you as much as I can.
Well, I think we're going to have a lot of fun tonight.
Good.
I really do. So we got some interesting stuff on the docket. Just to let everybody know, thank you for everybody who's actually listening to the show. We've put it out there for a few people. This is still one of our dress rehearsals. Depending on how things go and how we, what we talk about tonight and kind of how we feel, I think we might be getting really, really close to launching the show. So we've got our website up and running. We've got our YouTube channel up and running now. We've got a BitChute channel. For those of you who know what that is, it's basically like a YouTube underground type of thing. So you can find us on BitChute. YouTube and BitChute, we're under Fusion Underground. We're also on Twitter, Fusion Under. It's just at Fusion Under. You can't have long Twitter handles on Twitter. So
Thank you for the education, sir.
So I had to shorten it down a little bit, and I was like playing with other things and other types of strings, and I was just like, this is just simple. Let's just go ahead and go with that. So we're up on Twitter now. Let's see. If you go to the website, fusionunderground.net, you'll be able to get all of the links to all of these things. BitChute, YouTube, all of that is right there off of the main page. Our page is really simple. We're not running articles or anything like that on the page. It's a very simple, there's only 2 pages on the entire website, the podcast page and then an about page. So we have some basic general questions and answers about what we are and what we're trying to accomplish here on Fusion Underground. But right on that front page, it's got all of the different links to our RSS feeds and everything else. So if you're interested in that, you can also catch the podcast on Anchor, Breaker, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Radio Public. Again, all those feeds are right there off the main page. You can contact us, send us an email at contact@fusionunderground.net. So we'll get that right away. If you have any comments or questions or anything like that you want to pose to the show, feel free to drop us an email or find us on Twitter and be able to get in touch with us that way. On today's agenda, so the main topic that I have today is I want to talk about decision making. How do we make decisions, and how does the media influence our decisions? And should the media influence our decisions? So we're going to unpack that tonight on the show.
I have a short answer to that.
First,
probably cut it all out. My wife tells me.
She tells you how it's going to be, and you just do that.
She makes the decision, and I have the option to say yes, ma'am, or yes, ma'am.
Well, that's fair. that is totally fair. I have this story here. Before we get into that, I got a couple of little things I wanted to share with you. I thought this was pretty darn amazing. We've got, the entire world is in the grips of the coronavirus, right? And there's in the media, it was being talked about how the coronavirus came from China and Asian flu and yada, yada, right? Well, nature is not done yet with kicking us in the pants from Asia. There's this new thing that has been going around, and it actually started up in the Pacific Northwest, up in Washington State. And it's taking the Twitter sphere by storm right now. It's called a murder hornet. A murder hornet.
Wait. Really?
Yes, a murder hornet. Okay, now
that's better than a murder wasp.
Okay, now let me read to you the first paragraph of this article. This was in the New York Times. It just came out today, as a matter of fact. So this is cutting edge news on the Fusion Underground. So this is the first paragraph, and I think you'll get a kick out of this. It says, Ted McFall had never seen anything like it. As he pulled his truck up to check on a group of hives near Custer, Washington in November, he could spot from the window a mess of bee carcasses on the ground. As he looked closer, he saw a pile of dead members of the colony in front of a hive and more carnage inside. Thousands and thousands of bees with their heads torn from their bodies and no sign of a culprit. That's the first paragraph.
This is out of a news article. This is not a Stephen King book, right?
Yes.
Because I'm telling you right now, this would give the birds a run for their money. Now wait, did it say the bees' heads have been torn from their body?
Yes. Murder hornet.
Wait.
They have these gigantic mandibles that pierce through. This one guy, this guy who was investigating, trying to find the hive of these murder hornets, he was actually wearing a beekeeper outfit,
right?
And the hornets were stabbing him through the fabric of the protective gear, through his sweatpants, and drawing blood off of his legs. And they inject venom, so these suckers also have venom, and they have been known to kill humans. These are murder hornets.
They're murder hornet. That's. Yes. I'm speechless. I'm dumbfounded. I want one.
You want one?
I want a handful of them to keep my neighbors away.
Well, what's crazy about this, okay, is the article tries to describe what these murder hornets look like, right? And they describe it as having these sloped eyes like Spider-Man, these black and yellow stripes like a tiger, and wings like a dragonfly. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So God decided to mash up a superhero, a tiger, and a dragon, and slam that into a 2-inch size hornet that we now call a murder hornet that rips heads off of bees.
I gotta tell you,
this sucker doesn't mess around, man.
This sounds like something made up by a bunch of my gaming buddies. You know, I want to play this, the perfect mash of a death machine, but to balance that merit, I have to take the flaw of being itty bitty.
Murder hornet.
That's ridiculous.
So okay. This is actually going on in the Pacific Northwest.
So up I'm near sure you want to go Washington State.
Yeah, in Washington State, up there in the Washington State area.
All right, I'm gonna put that down. That's reason number 174. Looks like not to live in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
There you go.
I got another one.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I want to ask you how we're all kind of quarantined right now, and I take it you're still in quarantine, right?
Yeah, I'm home.
Self-imposed isolation, which I know is driving you absolutely nuts.
Yeah, for someone like me, that's murder.
Okay, well,
hornet.
Hornet. So, in Oregon of all places, I don't know, maybe it doesn't surprise me. I would have expected to see something like this out of Vegas, but Oregon, a local strip club there has decided to change its business model and is now doing drive-through strip clubbing. Drive-through strip clubs. Yeah. So I'm curious, how badly does one need to go to the strip club?
Don't ask questions to which my answers may scare you. We've talked about this before.
This is a clip from just a shot of the article here, a picture of the article. It's in good taste. She's not naked or anything like that, but you'll see she's in the middle of this, area, and you've got this gated area. There's a tent. You can see how there's this tent, and you can see off to the side there are women who are dancing on these poles, and there's a car behind her, and so the cars just kind of drive through here. So is this like a 2-for-1 minimum? I mean, are we drinking and driving here? What's happening? I mean, she's got a mask, so she's protected. Why are you like in the camera?
I'm really trying to understand. Oh
I
my.
love this picture. She's actually like leaning over the barricade, and the dude's given a dollar. It looks like he's even wearing a glove or
He's got
something.
a glove, and she's got a bucket. Apparently, that's her tip
That's
bucket.
her tip bucket, right?
Or she's not allowed to go to the bathroom. No bathroom breaks.
Right. And here's another shot through a stripper on a pole to another stripper on a pole in the cart. You know, they're all fully clothed. I don't understand. I just really don't understand what's
Well,
happening
no, I
here.
mean, there. Um, I don't necessarily think that that's really. I don't know. The I'm really trying to wrap my head around. I could actually see going through that, driving through that. No,
Could you really?
well, and here's why.
Okay.
For no
Enlighten me.
other reason, and it would have nothing to do with going to the strip club because that's not even close to the same thing. Um, it would almost be one of those things like, holy crap, I did it. It'd be like 10 years from ago, dude, you remember back when the Kung Flu was through and we were all
Uh-huh.
doing the isolation thing and we all loaded up all the guys in the car and we drove through the strip club? That was like Friday the 13th type
So,
stuff
but
right there.
they can't get any lap dances, right? They're
No,
not getting any lap dances. They're not. I don't even know how. I guess you just keep driving around in a circle.
it's kind of like going to look at Christmas lights. It's kind of what it is. You put your face up to the glass. Ooh, look at, and it's twinkling. And then I think this one moves with the music. That's very surreal. I can't believe anything out there is like. Well, no, at this point, I can believe just about anything. People are desperate to
Yeah,
trying to cling to anything they can right now.
yeah, people are desperate. I'm glad you brought that up because there are high schools all over the country are not graduating. We're right at the end of the semester, right at a time when high schoolers should be graduating. I'm not saying that they should turn into strippers, but several people have mentioned as a way to hold a graduation for these graduating seniors, because, and I get it, right? You have a lot of schools, high schools across the country, excuse me, have canceled all of their graduation, and it's high school. It's kind of it is this big ceremony, and for some kids, it's going to be probably the biggest ceremony of their lives. Just about all of them, it's probably the biggest ceremony up until this point, right? And now they don't get to don the cap and gown, and they don't get to walk across the stage and get their high school diploma. And several people that I talked to on social media, friends of mine and such, have been proposing this idea. So for those in Arizona, down in the valley anyway, a lot of the high schools will graduate. They hold all their graduation ceremonies at the large stadium where the Cardinals play, and they kind of rotate them every couple of hours. They'll do another school, and they, schools all around the valley are going through there. And so the idea is, well, the stadium has gigantic parking lots. What if we just put all the the families and the high school kid, the senior, in a car, and everybody just kind of sits out in the parking lot, and then we show we show the ceremony
It's a
inside.
graduation
Okay.
drive-in.
And then, yeah, and then when the speakers can get up there and have their speeches, and then the cars can drive into the stadium, and get their diploma, and then they drive out. I
Okay.
think this is absolutely ridiculous. This is not an actual idea that anybody is floating that could actually organize something like this. Again, this is people that I know who are talking about this on social media because they really want these kids to have a graduation ceremony. Now, from my perspective, it's kind of like, well, that's a bit ridiculous. Like, the idea for me is you put the cap and gown on. You sit there amongst your friends and you walk across the stage when your name is called, being out on the field, under the lights, and in that big pomp and circumstance celebration kind of thing. You get your picture taken up on the stage when you're shaking your principal's hand or whomever and receiving your diploma. Can you imagine at your graduation you sitting in a car, and you got a picture of you in the car and somebody's handing you a diploma through the window of your car?
No, I can't. But then again, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine anything like this happening anyway. I mean, you really want to take a look at it's we've got kids who aren't going to graduate or aren't graduating at all or aren't going to have any ceremony at all. What do you do? I mean, kudos to some of these guys coming up with something. What that I don't know. I mean, didn't West Point just do their graduation and they
Air
had the
Force
whole
Academy.
yeah, or excuse me. Yeah. They figured it out and they're getting trashed for it, but they figured it out
They
and they
didn't
did
sit in
it.
cars. No, we're talking Phoenix here. Okay, we're talking
Yeah.
Phoenix. It's already 100 degrees, and these ceremonies are like 2 hours long, on average. Thinking about the idea of a bunch of family members sitting in a car like they're in a drive-in in 100-degree weather, right? Think about all the hoopties that are out in the parking lot, because not all these kids are from
Well, and let's just be honest. You get that many family members and that many people out in the parking lot. I mean, I've been tailgating before, and that's a mess. But at least we're all there for the same team. I can
Well,
only. They're gonna be crazy people. You get too close to my grandma, bam! Next thing you know, there's fights breaking out because everybody's worried about how close they are and not too close, and then they're hot and they want to open the windows. Some other, social justice police person's coming up, knocking on them with a mask saying, you need to close your window up because you're letting all your germs out in the dude. That's a hot mess. It's a mess waiting to happen.
Well, and I was thinking about, like, if that were me in high school, right? I have this big Mexican family, and I can imagine all of my family trying to pile into one car, and they would get there, and then of course my uncle would probably have a grill, and my other uncle would probably have an ice chest or whatever, and there would be drinking, and there basically be tailgating for the entire time. And then it's going to get time for me to like drive in to receive my diploma, and I'm all stressed out because now my family has to put all the stuff back in the car, and I don't know if they're going to make it in time. And you got one uncle falling on top of another person, and cousin won't. Where did cousin Julio go? And he's all lost over there, and got to wrangle all these people together and cram them all in the car, so that we can just drive on. We're holding people up now. We got to go. Let's move here. I just
can't hear the announcer because everybody's honking at you. Get that low rider moving, man. I can see that actually.
That's just not. No, that's just. That's
not
just
going to work.
Bad idea. That's just a bad idea. That's just bad idea all the way around. I'm sorry. That's just a bad idea. All right.
Well, at least somebody had an idea. You got to be such a negative Nancy all the time.
Negative Nancy all the time. All right. So I got another little video here that I wanted to play for you.
All right.
So I got to get it set up here. I got to find that right spot. But the last one we did was actually pretty funny, and you enjoyed that, and I kind of liked watching you crack up about it. So
watching me laugh about the porcupine.
Yeah, about the porcupine.
Yeah.
So let's. I don't know if you can hear that. Can you hear that?
No, sir. Neither can anybody else.
Let me do this one then. We are so very technical here at the Fusion Underground, aren't we?
Yeah.
All right, let me try this one.
Police in New Orleans clearing out Bourbon Street, breaking developments in the coronavirus pandemic.
Look, I can understand it both ways. I understand it, but everybody act like the coronavirus is just so much of a big deal. Everybody scared and everything. I'm just saying, I played a hell of a joke on these people at work. Yeah. Look, I locked the door from the outside. They was in there having lunch. I walked in the room. I said, achoo! You should have seen them in there running, trying to get out the windows out of that thing. I said, hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right. They was in there sweating like a snowman in hell. Look, I just can't wait till you get back to the days where you can stick your in somebody's ass and not have to wash your hands afterwards. Now you gotta go ahead and drink a whole bottle of sanitizer before you do anything. The coronavirus is not that damn serious, y'all. Hey, don't do that.
Apologize, man. I'm sorry.
Don't do that.
Did he just reference licking somebody's butt without washing
his hands?
That's not what he said at all. He stuck his tongue out. And okay. Gross. Thanks.
So
Lighten the mood.
for full transparency, that guy's a comic. He does all kinds of crazy videos like that. So it wasn't like he was actually on the news, but I still got a kick out of it. I thought that was hysterical nonetheless.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So I wanted to get into this topic of how we make decisions, right? And when that video kind of pokes fun at this, right? Because that video is kind of catching wind on the whole hysteria related to COVID. And it's not my intention to debate whether or not COVID is a hoax or, are the numbers inflated and are all these conspiracy theories. That's not really why I want to talk about this particular topic of COVID, but really I want to focus more on how we make decisions. And because I think what ends up happening is the way media gets crafted, the way you have journalists and media sources, they write specific, whether it's news articles or they're producing clips that are going on television, they do so in a way that affects how people end up making decisions, and they play off of certain fears. I mean, in marketing and advertising, right? We talk about our students in business schools and taking marketing and advertising classes. They get to learn all about fear, uncertainty, and doubt in order to move a product, or the fear of missing out, for example. Well, media is no different. They're trying to make revenue. They do want to make profit. Journalists do want to get paid. Corporations own media sources, so there is incentive to drive viewership and drive readership to websites, etc. And so what do you think about this whole concept of does the media create things and manipulate the way people make decisions that are affecting themselves and them in daily life? I mean, you run to the store and I still can't buy toilet paper anywhere near me.
Oh, I can get toilet paper, but I'm not telling you where. It's my stash. No. Media is sales. I'm in sales. And I can tell you that life is sales, no matter what. You're being sold something by just about everyone you meet. And it's not malicious by any means. And any salesman knows that you ride the emotional wave. Sometimes you have to create it in order to ride it, but that's where you get your hook. If you've ever gone and bought a car, which everybody's bought a car, the number one rule for a car salesman is you never let your customer leave. Because you can actually control the emotion and you can get someone to buy a car or whatever it is you're selling based on an emotional response. And usually they like to drown up the excitement. And excitement can be whether it's fear driven or pleasure driven. That's why everybody wants to get you in to drive a car. When's the last time you test drove a car? Did you do the speed limit the whole time?
Just a few minutes. Just a few months ago, actually. We bought a new car. And no, you don't do the speed limit. You have a brief opportunity to try to test it out. You've got 10, 15 minutes really. Mm-hmm. So you want to get on the freeway, you want to punch it, and you want to peel out from a stopped position, etc. Slam on the brakes and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. I'll even bet you that the salesman probably told you, go ahead and hit it just a little bit.
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah. Because they know that acceleration, it's exhilarating. And everybody gets this excited, ha, 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 ha. Oh, wow, that was great. And now they love the car where they liked it before that. So when you're talking about media influence or anything like that, they've got to hook you into this story. And even if it is just to get you to watch from the beginning to the end. And so they'll give you teasers or tidbits, usually fear-based. You don't want to miss this. This next bit could save your life. You ever heard anything like that on TV?
Oh, sure.
And it's right before a commercial. So that you go, oh my God, quick, I got to go pee and fill up my drink and get back and sit here so that I don't miss whatever it is they're going to tell me because it's going to save my life. Or
this product will kill you and it's probably sitting in your refrigerator right now. More news at 11.
Yeah. Oh my
Only
God.
6.
What am I going to do? Okay, hit the pantry. Because I got chips in there, So yes, do I think the media, just like anything else on TV or anywhere, is trying to influence you? Of course it is.
But to what end though? To what end? Because they're not, obviously the media didn't tell everybody run out and buy toilet paper because
No.
of COVID-19. So if we accept the premise that the media is attempting to affect the way that we make decisions, what's the end game, or why are they doing that? I contend that they influence you to come back, to decide to keep coming back and keep looking at the information, and to be a mouthpiece as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
because people will go off and say, well, I read on MSNBC or I watched on CNN and they're reporting this.
mm-hmm. If you have nowhere else to go to get the information that's going to lead, direct, guide, and ultimately save your life, then you're a slave to that medium, whatever it is. You're going to come back, whether it's later today, you're going to come back again tomorrow. I get my news from, like you said, MSNBC, CNN, Fox, whoever it is. You're going to become what they call a loyal listener or a loyal viewer. And so, yes, that's how they make their money.
Right.
We talked about that before, knowing somebody's motivation. Let's be honest, media is a business. It is a business. There's very, very, very few true media outlets out there that are completely nonprofit. And even those need to get paid somehow to keep their operations going. So yeah, it is a business. They get money back from how many clicks on their website, by what their viewership or listenership is. Absolutely. So yes.
So I want to kind of unpack this a little bit, and I want to set the stage around decision making, because psychology has been wrestling with this concept of how we make decisions for a very long time. But one very popular theory was put forth by an individual, by a man named Seymour Epstein. And in 2014, he published a book that talks about how we make decisions. And what Seymour Epstein described were two separate information processing systems that reside within our consciousness. And these things influence, these two separate information processing systems, they influence our thinking, our perspectives, our behavior, as well as our decision making. So these two separate systems, he referred to them as analytical rational and intuitive experiential. And so the analytical rational side of us, we look for things like fact-based data, fact-based information, data, hardcore evidence, right? Black and white, those types of things. The analytical rational system is very logical, and it's very slow, and it's very deliberate. While the intuitive experiential system is often driven by high levels of emotion, it's very fast, it's very automatic. And so what Epstein argued, was that all people have this dual bidirectional processing system within them. And so on one hand, you have the intuitive experiential system, which has often been linked by psychologists to business innovation and creativity, while the analytical rational side has been more associated with performance and expertise and trying to eke out efficiencies. And so what Epstein described was, we need to maintain these two things in balance because they're good. I think on the one hand, the intuitive experiential, that's really, when we talk about, that's the side that when we say somebody makes a decision from their gut, right? They're basing it off of, well, I just have a feeling about this, or I have a hunch. That's what they're really basing that off of. And that side can be very attractive because it's very emotionally driven. And yet when we're faced with a gut making decision, we can typically make those decisions very, very quickly. When we're balancing data, like balancing our checkbook and understanding how much money we're going to have and how much money do I need to spend, now that's the analytical rational side of things. And then our decision making from that tends to be a little bit slower and a little bit more logical based. So my argument is that journalists and media will use these kinds of things, whether they know they're doing it or not. I think they play into it very naturally. They'll use these two information processing systems to influence readers when they're actually consuming a media text. Go for it.
No, I agree with you. And like you said, I think that's part of their natural process now. And like you said, you have to have both of those types of systems in order to be able to function in any society. If you've got somebody who's very reactionary, lives in the moment, or makes those gut decisions, like you said, I tend to be a little bit more that way. I am an emotional animal. A lot of people out there know me, already know that about me. Those of you that don't know that about me yet, stay tuned, because you'll probably learn that about me very, very quick. But that's usually me. On the other hand, people who are overly over analytical can sometimes be stagnated by that, always analyzing the data and never making a decision to take it a step forward. And especially in business, you need your analytics behind you backing up, so that you've got your intuitive individuals who are actually pushing the envelope forward, so that you can actually move that business forward. With your analytics behind you, we're actually advising of risks, potential rewards, and those type of things. Your worry warts actually fall into that analytical character or category, because they're worried about everything that could happen, so they never take a chance on what might be possible. And when it comes to media, I do think that intuitive nature, they'll grasp on to whatever they can that seems juicy in the moment. And usually it's the analytical part that actually gets that filled in the back end. And that sometimes takes, like you said, it's a lot longer process. So that might even take days or weeks for some of that to come out. And I think that's the part where they lose, or can tend to lose, some other people who are actually watching, that asks, well, why is this even relevant to me? What does that matter? Yeah, I get it that this might be juicy to somebody living in another city or state or in that area, or might be affected, but that doesn't matter to me. That's just noise. So I think with that analytical perspective, bringing it into, why is this relevant? And how could this affect my life? That's where those stories can actually become real news to everyone.
So I'm sharing the screen here. So I've got, this was from a couple of years ago. So I know this isn't COVID-19 related, but bear with me. We'll kind of eventually circle back around to that. But I'm displaying this image. This is just a static image, and it was capturing what CNN had reported. Now, several years ago, we had a few different gun shootings in the United States, and the gunmen at the time were using AR-15s. And I think you might remember this, that there was a lot of hyperventilating in the media around the AR-15 and how terrible of a weapon it is. I know you enjoy firearms. I do too. You're shaking your
No,
head.
no, 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 not me.
But look how this is written. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is I want to make a point here. This is something that, if you know anything, even just a bare amount, a little amount of information about firearms, then what the media reports in these next few examples that I want to show you, it's very easy for you to recognize and say, wait a minute, that isn't right. That's wrong. I recognize that. Now, if the media is able to do that, and on a topic that you are familiar with, imagine all of the other stuff that they're reporting on that you're not familiar with. And so what are you supposed to do? Take them at their word? And so what I'm trying to illustrate here by showing this kind of an example, this one here, Grayson. So Alan Grayson, he was a representative from Florida at the time, a Democrat from Florida. And Alan Grayson went on CNN, and he gave this claim that the AR-15 can fire 700 rounds per minute. Now, if you know anything about the AR-15, the AR-15 fires one bullet with one pull of the trigger. I don't know about you, but that, I gotta, like, how do you fire 700 rounds per minute with that little itchy trigger finger?
A lot of caffeine pills. So, but if you say that a trained marksman can pull the trigger 700 times in a minute, You don't have you don't have a target for this kind of attack.
I don't believe a trained marksman could even pull a trigger 700 times in a minute.
Okay. But the trained marksman is not what we're talking about.
No,
we're talking about the AR-15.
We're talking about the AR-15.
Right.
You know, that sucker would probably melt. Here's a journalist.
Well, it wouldn't melt. You'd have to have a magazine 700 rounds long, which good luck with that.
A gigantic drum or something.
We'll get into that. But
here's another tidbit. This was a journalist. His name is Gersh Kuntzman. He went Kuntzman. I don't know. He went and shot an AR-15 at a range, and when he finished shooting the AR-15, he claimed that he suffered PTSD because the AR-15 was such a ferocious weapon that it terrified him beyond all doubt. And he was now, why is that funny? Why is that funny? Because I know why it's funny.
No,
why is that funny?
I'm so sorry. And in all honesty, genuinely, to anyone out there listening who has PTSD, I am not amused by PTSD at all, or how it affects people. The idea that some guy got PTSD from shooting a firearm, I don't care if it's an AR-15, I don't care what it is, at a range, is ludicrous and really kind of sad. I really do. I want to just reach out and pet poor Gersh's head and say, bless your poor little heart, because that's insane.
And for anybody who has not fired an AR-15,
well, no, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to get a little upset here for a minute, because how dare that guy? How dare that guy? How absolutely insulting and offensive to anyone who truly does have PTSD. How about some of our soldiers who came back from war, who actually had to use an AR-15 for real purposes? And you're going to tell me, Gersh, out on your range, out there with your 50 people and your production team and whoever else, and your really pretty little earmuffs that you got to have on and shoot at a target, which was just a couple rings down range that I'm sure you probably shot maybe 15 rounds through, and you're going to have PTSD, and I'm supposed to feel something for you? Blow it out your bum, sir. Sorry, I'm off my rant for a minute. That's just
well. How about this particular one? Well, one second. The reason why I find that claim very ridiculous is that anybody who's ever fired anything like an AR-15, you know, the ammunition is just not that explosive, and there's very little kickback to it. So
no, and anybody who's actually been out there knows better.
It's not a terrifying experience. And
no.
I mean, if he okay, let's take him at his word and say that he was terrified after pulling the trigger a few times.
Okay.
Well, I think that says more about him than it does about the firearm itself.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
So here's another one. This was pushed out by ABC 13 in Houston. I'll give you a second to read this particular clip. A bazooka was among weapons found during a raid at a luxury condo near downtown Houston.
That looks like a shotgun to me.
Yeah. So here we have another example of media who have no idea what they're showing. They have no idea what they're showing. And sadly, there are a lot of people who have no idea what they're showing. But the other half of America that looks at this and says, wait a minute, that's a shotgun. Now you're starting to see, wait a minute, the media is perpetuating these news stories, and they're wrong.
Well, and keep in mind too, here we're talking about a shotgun, which not many years ago, our sitting commander-in-chief at the time advised anyone who was wanting a weapon for protection to go out and purchase a shotgun. But now, ABC 13 in Houston, bless your little hearts, I would expect more out of Houston, to be honest, but is going to take a picture of a shotgun, very obvious shotgun, and call it a bazooka. that's either crafted or a blatant show of their complete ignorance.
Well, how about this? Speaking of ignorance, how about this one? This was published by Bridget Bowman. I forget where she's a media personality at, but she is a journalist, and she wrote this tweet where she said a few years back there was a Capitol Police left a firearm in a bathroom on Capitol Hill. And so she pushed this tweet out that said, a Capitol Police officer left a gun in a bathroom, ... again. And not just any gun, a Glock, which fires if the trigger is pulled. Big scoop coming.
So I wonder if she means that the big scoop is the fact that a gun actually does fire when the trigger is pulled, or there's more to the story.
A Glock. I want to know what other kind of firearm exists where it doesn't fire if you pull the trigger.
Oh, yeah, that'll be a question. We'll ask our listening audience to email us with examples of guns that don't fire when you pull the trigger.
Now this next example I'm going to show you. This is from Senator Dianne Feinstein from California. She actually tweeted this out, but it went unchallenged in the media space. The news did not. No journalist questioned her about this. Even though her statement was completely ludicrous. So Senator Feinstein pointed out, she said, a handgun wound is simply a stabbing with a bullet. It goes in like a nail. With the high velocity rounds of the AR-15, it's as if you shot somebody with a Coke can.
Bless her heart.
Right? It's
Okay.
simply a stabbing. So I can shoot you, in other words.
Yeah.
I can shoot you with my 9mm, and don't worry about it, Jason. It's simply a stabbing.
It's just a stabbing, like a nail gun.
A nail gun.
Which they have not confiscated our nail guns yet.
Correct.
Thank God.
But maybe they should.
We can still build houses.
Yeah.
Because they haven't been confiscated.
But I tell you what, I want an AR-15 that shoots Coke cans.
Coke cans? Yeah.
I want that.
Diet Coke. It'll
want.
be my caffeine or my calorie friendly caliber.
Okay. My favorite journalist who has no idea what they're talking about. Now this tweet came out a couple of years ago during the Ferguson fiasco, and Ryan J. Riley, bless his heart, look what he tweeted out. He tweeted a picture, and he said, "I believe these are rubber bullets. Can anyone confirm?" Hashtag Ferguson.
That's a joke. That's got to be a joke. I mean, come on.
He got destroyed.
No. He got
destroyed.
Okay, for our listening audience right now, I have to make sure that you can understand why I don't believe any of this. Okay, you're talking about the little orange foamy earplugs that you put in your ear. You squish with your fingers and you stick them in your ear, and then you can't hear anything. There's 3 of them on the asphalt. And they're plain as day.
Dude,
no, stop. My 4-year-old could look at those and know that those are earplugs. If RJ Riley really, no, there's no way.
I know you can't. You can't accept it. You cannot accept it. It's cognitive dissonance for you to even think it's real.
Are you telling me that he actually was questioned and this thread goes on and he really did believe?
Oh, yeah. He left it up there for quite a while. He had no idea what they were.
Ladies and gentlemen, these are the people that are advising you about the news.
Yes. Again, when you know it's wrong, what's stopping these people? They're not checking any of their sources. So here's something that the USA Today came out with. They actually published this image. They published this image because they wrote an entire article about the AR-15 and the terrible types of modifications that could be put on AR-15s to make them even more terrifying. And look at this. This is an image that they put on USA. This was literally on USA Today's website. A picture of an AR-15 with a chainsaw bayonet.
I want one.
Right?
I want a chainsaw bayonet for my AR-15. What
But
the heck is wrong with people?
but that spawned beautiful memes. I think Twitter just couldn't handle it anymore. It spawned beautiful memes. It spawned this gem, which was an AR-15 with a chainsaw bayonet with silencer. Or one of my favorites, uh, possible modifications: an AR-15 with a chainsaw bayonet with another chainsaw bayonet on top of an AR-15 and a chainsaw bayonet, and so forth.
You know, this is funny.
How about this one? The Kaepernick bipod
the Kaepernick take a knee bipod for your AR-15.
for your AR-15. I got a few other ones here. This one, I like this one. This one was, I thought this one was pretty clever. This one here, which is an AR-15 holding an AR-15 holding an AR-15 holding a chainsaw bayonet.
This is
or this one. This one was a clever one. An AR-15 with an AR-15 rifle scope and an AR-15 bayonet firing AR-15 assault rifle bullets.
they should be Coke cans.
And we have an AR-15 with a great white shark bayonet. And we have an AR-15 with a great shark bayonet shooting a laser.
They're sharks with laser beams attached to their friggin' heads. Yeah, I got. So, look, all these are hilarious. They really are. They're funny. But the sad reality is, this spawned from USA Today. And I'm not picking on USA Today because any one of our news media outlets could do something like this. And they were absolutely 100% serious about an actual chainsaw bayonet on an AR-15 and expecting people to not only take them seriously, but then be ultimately, like we started out saying, ultimately be afraid enough to join their cause in pushing the agenda to try and push legislation against owning an AR-15.
Mm-hmm.
It's disturbing. It's disturbing to think that these are the same people who we are tuning into right now to try and tell us how to better protect ourselves and our family during an actual pandemic. It turns my stomach. I almost don't want to finish my beer.
So I want to bring this back to COVID-19 because what I want to try to illustrate is how journalists write specific articles and how redonkulous these articles are. I know you were cracking up when I would do that, you know. I actually wish I had this printed out so I could do this. So this is an article that was written by CNN, by CNN.com. And the title of the article, and I want to get your takeaway. What do you think about the title of this article? How does this article make you feel? Or what do you think is the type of response that Angela Dewan of CNN is trying to conjure up in readers? The article is "Lifting Lockdown Safely Relies on Effective Testing. Germany surges ahead, but U.S. states are flying blind."
How are we flying blind? What does Germany have that we don't?
Well, she's obviously gonna dive into that.
Well, no, but I mean, so you asked me, what is that? How does that make me feel? Oh my gosh, how are we behind Germany again? What are we not doing? How dare we? Who do I get mad at? You know, I mean, it's already spawning this idea that we're behind in the race. You know, it's like a different kind of space race. And we're not fighting the Russians to get to the moon. We're trying to figure out who around the world's got this figured out better than we do, and why aren't we in first? I actually heard someone, and I don't remember well enough, so I apologize out there, but it was one of our elected officials was giving an interview and said that we cannot afford to come in second place. We have to be first when it comes to developing treatment, developing vaccine, developing cure. And I thought that was an interesting choice of words when we were talking about it. It's instead of actually focusing on getting it because we need it, it's almost the competition. And
Right.
ironically, when you bring that up, that's kind of almost what it feels like.
Right. Well, she goes on in her article, she says, as governments around the world begin easing their lockdowns and as new infections are inevitable, they will get another chance to get their responses right, meaning these governments are going to get a second chance to be right about how they tackle COVID-19. She says, many are embracing that second chance, but some US states are not. That's it. But some US states are not. She doesn't go into describing why she came to that conclusion. She doesn't offer any supporting evidence. It's but some states are not, period. That's it.
So that's useless information. It's not even information.
It's not even
It's not
information.
even there's no factual information. There's nothing leading that does the American people nothing positive. It does not give me, as an average citizen, any kind of insight into anything whatsoever, other than maybe that someone has some idea of some information somewhere that I don't.
Right.
So stay tuned. More to
Right.
come.
Well, and I like this particular line. She's got a section in the article that says US misses testing mark, or US misses testing benchmark, in parentheses, but so does the UK. So she's calling out the United States is screwing up. That's the assertion here. But then in parentheses she has, but so does the UK. And she goes on and she writes, the way some leaders talk about the level of testing can be confusing. President Trump had claimed that the US had carried out the most tests in the world. And while that may be true per capita, it's not leading. So what she does is she says what Trump has said, meaning we're leading the world in testing. And even says, while that may be true, it's not good enough for her because it doesn't meet the right definition that she is using and other people like her are using.
Well, but it doesn't lay out what that is either.
She goes on a little bit more, but it's the way that's the introductory paragraph to this particular section. She's calling out the line of, well, President Trump is the assertion is, well, he's lying, but not really.
We're doing really good, but not really good enough.
Not really good enough.
Okay.
Right? So that's the takeaway from this particular thing. So she goes on, she says, while it's useful to look at how widely a country is testing per capita, the WHO says there is a better benchmark to measure whether a country is testing adequately. Dr. Mike Ryan, executive director of the WHO's Health Emergencies Program, said recently that a good benchmark is to have at least 10 negative cases for every 1 positive case confirmed. That means if a state or country carries out testing and comes back with positive cases of around 9% or under, then it's likely that it is doing well. The US has a positive result rate of 18.8%, going by the COVID tracking project's figures cited by JHU. So what she's essentially saying is, we are testing, and all of the people that we are testing, almost 20% of the people that we are testing are coming back positive. But somehow that is an incorrect way of testing for her.
Well, and it almost makes it sound like we should just be blanket testing the entire country, which, you know what, that's an approach. But let's look at just the population of the United States versus many other countries in the world. And I'm not going to pick on anyone in particular, but we have a very high population density. I don't believe that there's that many tests in existence in the world to try and even do that. So if she's trying to make the case that we need to just blanket test everybody until we get this 10 or negative cases for every 1 positive, is I believe is what you said back.
Yeah.
The only way to do that would be to literally send, you would have to actually send a home test kit, like a home EPT for everybody for COVID, in the mail. Everybody in the household would have to swab their own selves. Hopefully they do it correctly, and then send it back. We don't have the healthcare facilities or infrastructure to try and test the entire United States population. We could never do that. And 2, even if you were to try and send those tests out, just like what I've just mentioned, what is the reliability of any of those tests? I mean, that's a pipe dream first and ludicrous second, or strike that and reverse it.
Well, and she had her very next statement here. She says, because remember, we're testing at 18.8% of a positive result rate. She says such high rates suggest a country is only testing the worst cases, usually people who are severely ill and in hospital. Well, no kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Actually, that's under the direction of the CDC. If you'd like to dive into that a little bit more, I can really actually touch on that semi-intelligently.
Well, the whole point of testing, look, no matter how many tests you actually have, they're going to be scarce.
Mhm.
The first rule of economics is things are scarce. The first rule of politics is to disregard the first rule of economics. So the only way that we can be sure to get the best bang for our buck for a very limited resource called COVID-19 testing is to use it where people are sick, not to go door to door into every neighborhood and test every Tom, Dick, and Harry to see whether or not they have COVID-19. That's just a waste of resources. It's a waste of manpower. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of these tests. Why
Right.
on earth would we do that when there are people that are sick and that need to be confirmed so that doctors can put together an adequate treatment plan?
Well, and even there, let's just pretend you were starting to feel sick today, and you were feeling sick tomorrow. You are actually advised, and I'm sure you know this, do not go into the emergency room. You know that.
Correct. Yeah. That's
You
what
are
we're
supposed to
advised.
call your primary care physician, who will review your symptoms, with you over the phone and try and keep you there. And if then you actually meet the CDC minimum criteria for testing, then and only then are you to then go to a hospital for testing. So we're doing everything we can right now to make sure that we keep people out who do not need to be tested for that. And actually, I don't see how that doesn't make sense. I am not going to take my daughter up to the hospital to get tested if she's not symptomatic with COVID symptoms.
Right.
I'm not. She's fine, by the way. Everything's good. But it's just, yeah. I'm not sure exactly what planet she's living on. Bless her heart for trying. But
It's, you know, the main thing that I want people to try to take away from these kinds of articles is you have to read them and think, well, where's the supporting evidence in that? Why wouldn't we keep our testing, for example, to where it's needed, right? And often these media personalities will craft these particular articles in a way to shape public opinion, because that's the entire purpose of this particular article. This article is intended to shape the way people respond to this thing called COVID-19, as opposed to what I think journalism should really be about, and that is to report on public opinion and things that are actually happening. And so now they're using it to actually shape public opinion, and I think that's egregious.
well, and anytime I hear any news article or any news story, and this is from anyone, so I am not picking on any one organization, but I think it was my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Thompson, who said, who always taught. No, it was my fifth. It was Miss Cannon. I'll never forget her. Bless her heart. I miss her. She always said it. When you hear something, always ask who, what, where, why, how. Always ask when you're being given anything that you are told to either obey or is fact. The only exception to that, of course, is your parents, because they get to tell you because I said so, and it doesn't matter. My wife also gets that too, so I have both of those. But whenever you're hearing the news talk about this, remember that they do draw up that emotional response. So take a moment, let it sit. Use that analytical part that Epstein talked about so very eloquently, and ask just those questions. If you get logical answers to those, then it's probably it may very well be factual and probably good. Go with that, but don't follow blindly out of either ignorance or just being lazy, because I think that's how people are controlled.
Yeah. Well, and and it has bigger ramifications beyond just the individual people. I mean, this is a type of news story that has, for all intents and purposes, has brought our entire economy to a screeching halt. Now, we can debate the reasons for doing that. That's a separate debate. But given the media's intention of shaping public opinion, that has an effect of bubbling up to politicians, right? And so just this past week, we had a situation in California where Californians decided, I'm going out. And they flocked to beaches in Orange County in Southern California. And the reporting of it was severe, such that the journalists in the LA area and such were lamenting how people were putting others at risk. And that information bubbled up to the governor's office. And then Gavin Newsom issued an order to close the beaches down, because he said that, well, if you're out there at the beaches, you're putting people at risk. Now, the question becomes, is that true?
Well, okay.
Is that a true statement?
So let's just pretend. Let's swallow a piece so that we can we'll take the bait and see where the line goes. So let's just pretend. All right, we're putting others at risk. Who are we putting at risk? If I'm going to go to the beach and I'm going to be around other people who are also going to the beach, who is at risk? I'm at risk, and those other people are at risk. So that's essentially a choice that I am making, and I am doing that for myself. Now, hopefully I'm single, and I'm doing that on my own, and I'm not bringing anybody else along with me who may be at high risk for fatal infection. But that's a risk we may be taking if that were true. But then so are the other people who are also going, but they're doing that out of their, that's an informed choice at that point. And how is that any different than, I don't know, going to work when you have a cold?
Right. Well, so the question that I had was, well, is it really true? Are people really being put at risk if we're going outside? In fact, just today, there were more protests. Yesterday and today, there were more protests in Southern California, where people were flocking to and just piling into streets. I mean, like by mobs. I mean, just mobs and mobs of people piling into streets. The military has been doing flyovers of various cities. They did a flyover yesterday of the valley. Like 15 planes flew over the entire valley along a predefined route in honor of the first responders for COVID-19. Okay. And the military has been doing this in other cities around the country. And today the military flew planes over Washington, DC, and Washingtonians, they piled out onto the National Mall to watch the planes fly over. So the question becomes, well, are people at more risk if they're going outside? Now, Time here has an article talking about a study that was done to determine just how far and rampant a virus can spread. And what Time concluded, I shouldn't say what Time concluded, but what they reported on based on studies that have been done, is that viruses get transmitted, a virus transmission is worse indoors because it has a tendency to stay as an aerosol indoors longer, whereas outside, not only is the virus attacked by sunlight and UV radiation, et cetera, that can kill the virus itself, but when somebody sneezes or coughs outside, the variables in wind and air and humidity, et cetera, usually force those spit particles, if you will, those saliva particles and moisture particles that somebody emits, usually forces them right to the ground, and there's actually a reduced chance of contracting a virus if you're outside.
That's correct. Yeah. And keep in mind too, the collective we're all advised to go outside, go hiking, go for walks, do all those things, because there's a high chance of depression and social isolation when being inside. And yes, and anybody who's got kids knows if you've got kids, you're going to get sick because they are going to infect everyone in the household. And for those of you who have school age kids, you know you're you're going to probably get whatever it is twice because it'll make two circles around. So yeah, is that true? Are you really putting yourself and everyone else more at risk, or are people no longer able to control everybody because you are saying, nope, I've had enough, I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm making an informed choice? What happened to my body, my choice? Oh wait, that doesn't work for this. I don't know.
No, that doesn't work for this. Well, and you have people now that are filing complaints against their neighbors. You have people that are literally calling the police to report their neighbors leaving their homes because they feel compelled to. They feel compelled to because they've read our news articles, they've watched the news, they've heard that this virus is hyper contagious and is absolutely deadly. Even though the CDC and the WHO have reported and said the vast majority of people who contract the disease, which amounts to almost 90% of people who contract the disease, have little to no symptoms, have very mild symptoms, and do recover. So when you have the vast majority of people who contract the disease and they do recover, but that information does not get reported. What gets reported are the deaths. And even the CDC and the WHO show that only those who are critical patients and those who tend to have other underlying health complications are the ones that are dying. And yes, that's terrible. That's absolutely tragic. And we should protect those people as much as we possibly can. But in reality, the vast majority of people who contract the disease are not at that level of risk where they're going to die. Now, that might trigger some people, that might get some people angry, but you have to ask, why are you getting angry at that? If the CDC and the WHO are literally saying the vast majority, we're talking like close to 90% of the people worldwide who have contracted the virus are not at risk of death. Why are you so upset now? Why are you so upset by hearing those words? So I think you have to do some introspection and ask yourself, well, wait a minute, why am I getting so mad about that?
Well, we're supposed to. That's what we've been told. We're supposed to be mad. We are supposed to police each other. Matter of fact, you talked about neighbors calling the police on each other about them not obeying the social distancing laws, going out when they're quote unquote not supposed to, doing this, that, the other. I've heard worse that actually, and I believe it was. Now, don't quote me on this. Well, I'll have to go back and fact check. And at least here we can say we'll go back and fact check. But I believe it was de Blasio who actually said, if you've got people in your family and that you share a household with that are actually doing that, you need to inform us so that we can actually come check on them. If you have somebody in your home that's sick, it's your duty and responsibility to call so that we can send someone by to do a neighbor or someone by to do a wellness check on them. I'm sorry, there was one other person in history who had kids especially turning in their family members, but I don't want to make correlations to that necessarily. You talk about the CDC reporting deaths. I'm sorry, that's a crummy subject for me. I know the CDC's actually admitted that the deaths that are being reported are not confirmed, 100% confirmed linked to COVID either. And I mentioned this to you before. If you have a patient who is in the hospital who passes away, who was positive for COVID-19, that's a COVID-related death. If you have a patient who passes away while they're in the hospital where COVID was in the hospital, they're saying that is a COVID-related death, even though that patient may be tested and comes back negative for the disease. They are reporting that as COVID-related because they're not testing the dead.
Well, and what's interesting with the CDC, I'm glad you brought it up, because just yesterday, the CDC revised their death numbers from COVID-19 downward. So the media of late has been reporting deaths upwards of 65 to 67,000 nationwide. Well, just yesterday, COVID-19, and I screen capped this and I'm sharing it now, the CDC revised their estimates down. Now the total is 37,000. And this is actually from February 1st, 2020 through 4/25/2020, through April 25th, 2020. and they
Right.
released these numbers on May 1st. Data as of May 1st. The COVID-19 deaths, total deaths, 37,308. What's interesting is influenza deaths. You'll notice that they've been consistently tracking like right around 500. And then right around April 18th, those things fall off a cliff down to 215, 425 down to 67. So our flu rates are dying out, or are flattening out. That could be for a number of reasons. We're getting more and more closer to the end of the flu season. It could be the fact that, yes, a lot of people have been staying indoors, so maybe fewer and fewer people are contracting the disease, et cetera, et cetera. Who knows? Maybe people in their panic of didn't want to come down with both COVID-19 and flu, so maybe more people ran and got a flu shot, and people that were at risk for maybe getting the flu were able to protect themselves and not get it, et cetera. But the COVID deaths are kind of plateauing. But again, the media is not going back and correcting this.
Mm-hmm.
And yet people are still perpetuating the idea that deaths are above 65,000 total US Americans. I mean, and don't get me wrong, even one American is one too many. But what this is telling me is that this is less than 0.5% of the US total population, of a country of 328 million people. It's less than 0.5%. And yet we're shutting our entire economy down over this.
Well, and keep in mind one thing too, because I'm going to challenge you on your data recap real quick. And I don't ever do this, so this is a rare moment for me. So ha ha ha.
Sure.
You have to actually, when you're looking at your influenza deaths, because this is something that the case was made very, very early on. Anybody who's at risk for influenza has a higher risk for COVID. So you have to add in your last column, which are deaths with pneumonia, influenza, and COVID-19. And those numbers, that's where you're getting your majority. Notice that a lot of those deaths that are associated also had flu.
Yes, and this is a complete bunch. This is very difficult data for anybody to parse through, because you have three different things at play: the pneumonia, the influenza, or the COVID. And so that is a very difficult statistic, right? So that in and of itself, but we're still talking about, nowhere on here are we talking about 60,000 purely COVID related deaths, which has been
Correct.
what the number is.
Right.
So, and let's face it, the CDC also came out and said anybody who was suspected of having COVID, as you mentioned, I think earlier, if you were even suspected of having it, you were recorded as having COVID. I read a story today that somebody they watched their father fall to the ground. He died of a heart attack on the living room floor, and the death was ruled as a COVID-19 death.
Yeah, correct. That's been happening since February. I know that for a fact.
And so the same thing could be over here in the other column with the deaths with pneumonia, influenza, or COVID, right? We don't know what these numbers are. In fact, we don't even know what the COVID-19 deaths are. Now, could the numbers, for the sake of argument, could the numbers be much higher? They absolutely could be much higher. They could be. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that no, COVID-19 deaths are actually being reported at 65, 67,000 deaths across the entire country. But what do you do with the information when you realize from the CDC's mouth itself that even people who are suspected of having it are being marked as death from COVID?
Right.
That has to draw into your mind, wait a minute, that has to create some element of pause and confusion, because now the data is not good data. The data in and of itself is just junk. So even if we downgrade the number to 37,000, I can't even tell you if that is a legitimate number or not, because the data and the data reporting has been bunk this entire time.
Right. And more to the point, and I'm glad you brought that up. That was from the CDC's mouth themselves. So it's not anyone maliciously attacking their claims. It's not anyone maliciously saying that they're misreporting for any reason or malintent in any way. They are admitting that they do not, or their data is skewed. But keep in mind, they're the experts that are going to be able to advise you on what you need to do to save your life. and your family's life. And so your individual liberties and freedoms need to be set aside, so that you can follow along with what they are telling us to do. Well, at least today.
Well, and the problem with Gavin Newsom, for example, is not just being relegated to California, because we have Bill de Blasio, mayor of New York City, coming out last week saying that he was going to arrest Jews who were participating in a funeral service, and he literally threatened to arrest them. In fact, I think it was Thursday, either Thursday or Friday, he did send police officers into Jewish neighborhoods and was actually serving Jews $1,000 citations, because Jews were getting together in their Jewish centers, holding prayer services, etc., but they were actually social distancing inside the prayer centers, and they were keeping the number of people to around 10, maybe 15 or so, but they were social distancing, so they're spread out in there. And the police were coming in and they were giving them citations, $1,000 citations, and this is specifically targeting a group of people. When call it, you may think that, yes, get them, they're coming out, they're endangering people, they're endangering my life. Ask yourself, why are you so enraged by that? Why would another American be enraged by some Jews who are minding themselves and social distancing and trying to do the right things, and still these people are chomping at the bit and want to throw them in jail?
Well, and here's something interesting, because I heard, and I'm sure you did, in or around this story, there was a lot of focus on the fact that this was a Jewish gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard some opposing arguments saying, well, are the police actually monitoring what's happening in the mosques? Are they going in and issuing $1,000 citations into Muslim gatherings or anything like that? And actually, I had to take a step back, because I started to fall prey to that too. Again, with some of that rage, why is it the Jews always being segregated against? And so I had to take a step back from that. And I said, wait a minute. Let's back this up. Let's take the religious aspect completely out of it. These are American citizens. They're people.
Right.
Why is that okay in any way, shape, or form? I don't care about your religion at all. Why is that okay? And why is it that we feel this idea that, well, it's for the greater good? Whose greater good? Whose greater good? I mean, that can happen to you. That can happen to me. That can happen to anyone. You know what? When are we publishing this? A couple days from now? Okay, good. My mom is coming up tomorrow with my grandfather. Guess what? They're older.
Mm-hmm.
They're at higher risk. They're going to come up and visit me and my wife and my 2 kids, because it's been a little bit since they've seen their grandkids. They want to do that. They are coming up from Prescott Valley, which is only about an hour away. But I will bet you $1 to a donut, someone out there is going to go, whoa, that is absolutely breaking the rules. There's not supposed to be any travel. That's considered a family gathering. How many people are we talking about total? That you're putting my life at risk. You don't even know where I'm at. Not really. But I mean, who are you trying to protect everyone from? And why is this become such a dog eat dog situation that we forget what it is to be citizens in the same country, to be neighbors, to be brothers, to be friends, to be coworkers, to actually live in the same place together, where we feel like we have to be enemies almost just out of sheer, and it is fear that is driving this.
So to kind of bring this all full circle, I think a lot of the media plays off of the emotion, and they will wrap things up so that they feel like when you're reading an article or you're watching a newscast, you feel like there is some logic behind it. They'll put some data around it, regardless of, and maybe the data is bunk data. We already talked about how the data coming out of the CDC is fuzzy at best. It's gray at best. But when they start crafting news articles and producing video clips, and they're using data, it sounds good. And so it plays into our rational side of things. And yet when the way they word things and they keep things very ambiguous and they don't offer any additional proof on certain things and they play off fears, well, that plays to the intuitive emotional side of things. And so I think media journalists continue to play these kind of elements within readers to keep them coming back and keep the clicks coming so that they can keep reviewing and sell advertisements on their web space. And ask yourself, I mean, the only thing that I really hope people take away with, regardless, you might think that COVID-19 is the worst thing. And you know what? You might be right. But at least I would challenge anybody to think about things a little bit more critically when they're looking at something and saying, wait, where's the information to back this up? Or how could this conclusion have been made if there was no supporting evidence for that particular claim? And so that's really what I want. That's really the takeaway that I want people to have is, yeah, it might be completely terrible. And if that's the case, convince people that it is by showing them that evidence and synthesizing that information across multiple sources and thinking about things rationally rather than just feeding into the hysteria, and calm down. So, and please, for God's sake, stop buying toilet paper. All right.
Yeah. And, you know, we talked a lot about COVID tonight, but in all actuality, we didn't talk about COVID at all, because this isn't about the disease. This is really about hearing a story. And keep in mind, they do call news articles and news blogs stories because it is someone telling you a story. So what, I guess to piggyback on that, I would challenge anyone out there, when you are hearing a story, if there is even a slight eye twitch that says, wait, what? And it causes you to think for a minute, hold on to that. Listen to it through, and then go back and ask those who, what, where, why, how questions, and gather that information and then move forward with it before you just swallow it whole. This is really more about, you know, who do you want to just follow along, or do you want to think for yourself? And be informed, but be aware of what you're being informed of.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I think we talked that one to death. So before we call it a day, I wanted to share just one last funny that I found. I think you'll get a kick out of it, and I think it'll just be a nice way to kind of wind down from a serious conversation about around having to deal with the media in and of itself. So let's have a little fun at the media's expense. So this is an actual news interview that occurred. This isn't just an actor or a comedian who's trying to be funny. I got a kick out of this one. I think you will too.
My friend came to the door. She said, well, I was on the phone cooking me and my baby some breakfast. And she said, hey, something wrong. It's popping. I said, what? She said, yeah. I said, no. So the girl come downstairs. She come out her apartment with her baby with no shoes on. I said, oh, girl, it's cold outside. She said, something ain't right. I said, oh, man. She said, oh, man, the building is on fire. I said, no, what? I got my 3 kids and we bounced out. We ain't gonna be in no fire. Not today.
Sir.
I think I've actually seen that before.
I love her so much.
Well, that was true, but it sounded an awful lot like a story to me.
The building was on fire.
Wow. And we just lost listeners. Sorry about that.
So yeah, this is going to go up on YouTube and up on the podcast RSS feeds tomorrow. So you'll be able to find it on YouTube, BitChute, Spotify, etc. Go to fusionunderground.net. You'll be able to find all of the links there. Like us, give us a comment. It's going to help promote the show and get it out there to more and more people, and share the links with everybody else. The email, the email address, you can send us an email at contact@fusionunderground.net. That's contact@fusionunderground.net. For Jason Moret, I'm Manuel Ramirez. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a good night, all.